Egypt experienced major and dramatic changes at the end of the Ice Age, particularly about 10,500 BC, when very high, exceptionally high floods covered the floodplain, and it ended things both in the Delta and the Nile Valley in general.
10,500 BC, a time of floods. Could the designers of Giza point back to that distant time? The time their myths say that the god Osiris and his helpers ascended from chaos to bring first fruits of civilization. Where did they come from? A god who was very similar was lord of ancient Tiwanaku in Bolivia.
Here in this mysterious city of Tiwanaku, the god they worshipped, tall, bearded, described as white. Viracocha emerged in times of chaos and destruction from across the waters to bring some kind of renewal to the human race.
The white god Viracocha. In Mexico, he's called Quetzalcoatl, who came with others to bring the first fruits of knowledge. His symbol is all over Teotihuacan.
The feathered serpent, symbol of the enigmatic god Quetzalcoatl, who came from the east after times of tremendous cataclysm to bring civilization to this part of the world.
Could gods like Osiris, Viracocha and Quetzalcoatl have been real people who came from afar? Survivors of a cataclysm that had destroyed their homes and civilization?
Now, the question we're asking is this. Was there some remote civilization, as yet unidentified, that touched Egypt, Mexico, and South America, and left its imprint, however difficult to discern, in a body of knowledge? Now, taken in isolation, I agree. Each bit of evidence reveals little, but let's consider all these common elements together.
Both sides had huge pyramids, precisely aligned to the cardinal points, incorporating sophisticated knowledge of mathematics. Both demonstrated an astounding knowledge of astronomy, expressed in the great sacred monuments they both erected. Although they knew neither pulley nor wheel, both could build using huge stones finely jointed, in a unique style of construction with L-shaped corners and metal clamps. And both cultures used the process of mummification to preserve and honor their dead. Here a new astounding clue was found when Dr. Balabanova of the German University of Ulm discovered to her surprise that many mummies from Egypt contained cocaine and nicotine, indigenous to South America.
Ich habe eine Reihe von Briefen bekommen, die fast gefährliche Briefe waren, beleidigende Briefe, dass das alles eine Unfug ist, dass das Fantasie ist, dass das absolut unmöglich ist. Es ist nachgewiesen, dass diese Pflanze vor Kolumbus nirgendwo in der ganzen Welt außer Amerika vorhanden waren.
But her research was repeated on hundreds of mummies and proved beyond refute. Did, in some distant past, seafarers indeed cross the seas and influence the cultures on both sides of the Atlantic? The thought is even suggested by what is not there: Mexico, the ancient culture of the Mayas.
The Mayan priests had tables for predicting the eclipses of the sun and the moon. Yet there was something very odd about the Mayans. They never even grasped the simple principle of the wheel. They were able to visualize eternity as no previous civilization could, thinking in terms of millions of years, and yet they never learned to weigh a sack of grain. This sophisticated civilization finally died because they didn't develop the simple agricultural methods to feed their own people. Now, what I'm suggesting is it possible that they simply inherited a specific part of their knowledge from some much earlier and wiser civilization?
Contact. Sometimes the evidence is there for all to see. The ancient Olmecs in Mexico gave their rulers the face of an African.
And how about this, carved by these same Olmecs? It's genetically impossible for Indians to have beards. And yet, you have this face of a white Caucasian male carved perhaps 2,000 years before the Spaniards first came to the New World. So, faces of Africans and Caucasians carved many centuries before Columbus. Where did they come from? How did they get here? How did they come to influence the most ancient culture of Central America, the mother culture of Mexico? All that archaeologists know is that they suddenly materialized, fully evolved about 1500 BC. No sign of a development phase. These people, whose characteristic expression was the carving of huge stone heads of Caucasian and Africans, seem to have come out of nowhere.
Oaxaca, the ancient citadel of Monte Alban.
Here, further to the south in Mexico, is what seems to be the last record of these mysterious men. These figures carved in stone seem to represent men who've been slain in battle, naked, forlorn, most of them castrated. This may be the point where these men disappear from history. So, a sophisticated seafaring civilization that crossed the Atlantic centuries before Columbus. But there's another piece of evidence. There are old maps that suggest that ancient seafarers possessed a knowledge of the globe that's never been explained.
A puzzle for scientists throughout this century. In 1513, Turkish Admiral Piri Reis mapped out parts of the world no one had ever seen at the time.
Columbus only explored the areas in the Caribbean. He didn't get to South America. He didn't get down to this area of South America all the way down to Antarctica. He didn't get anywhere near this area. But these maps are showing all these features accurately well before Columbus or the European explorers have reached these areas. This map, which is centuries old, depicts the true configuration of Queen Maud's Land, which is now under nearly a kilometer of ice, and its true configuration wasn't determined until 1949.
Unexplained. Cartographers have long pondered the strange projection used. It was found to resemble the one a modern nuclear submarine uses, which measures the world as it moves away from the center where it prowls. In this case, its center lay in Syene, Egypt, home of ancient cartographers. The map only seems distorted, but it accurately shows this part of the world. And there's more.
To my mind, the most significant aspect of the Piri Reis map is the fact that it accurately depicts longitude, something that Europeans weren't capable of doing until the 18th century, but this is a 16th century map.
Longitude. That story began on these beaches in the year 1707, when the English fleet was sailing from the Mediterranean towards the coast of England. Now, in those days, it was quite easy to determine how far north or south you were by measuring the angle that the sun or the stars made of the Earth's surface.